to the College Board Search webinar, A Deeper Dive, Accessing All Opted-in Students. We'll be recording today's session and we will email you after the webinar along with the slide deck and some additional information. Thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Carolyn Knowles-Sorg. I've been part of the search team here at College Board for 3 years, and I came from higher ed enrollment management. I actually started my career in student affairs at a liberal arts college in New York, but I quickly found my home in admissions, where I spent about 10 years at a large public university and also at 2 smaller private colleges, all of which were in Ohio. Among other things, I was responsible for search in the enrollment management leadership role I held before I came to College Board.
And my name is Mark Barrett. I've been with the College Board for a little over 5 years, and over the past 3 have been focused exclusively on helping institutions with search strategy. Prior to the College Board, I spent about 15 years in admissions and enrollment management at several different private institutions in both the Midwest and the Northeast. Happy to be with you to share some important information that I hope will help you in your search efforts. College Board Search is a suite of enrollment solutions that includes student search service, enrollment planning service, segment analysis service, and Interest in My College. Each of these tools broadens access to key data and enhances recruitment strategy. College Board Search is the largest database of college-bound students in the country. We have 2 million new students opting in annually, and for the first time ever, College Board is beginning to add all students who have opted into search into the database, regardless if they have an assessment, and that started this week. You already know that search helps you by providing a targeted way to take your message directly to students who are qualified with an assessment or now without. And as a result of that connection, search plays a critical role in student access to college. Participation in search increases a student's probability of college enrollment by 12%, and the effects for low income and underrepresented minority students are even greater.
Take a quick look at our agenda for today. We're going to begin with a few important College Board updates. From there, we'll review how search works, given College Board's decision to make all opted-in students available. We'll review new data that's coming in now as a result, and share updates on functionality in the search interface. From there, we'll dive deeper into strategy, showing you live scenarios in search. And as always, we'll wrap up by previewing exciting upcoming webinars and take your questions. This is a good point to pause and let you know that the Q&A and chat boxes are open. You can use either to send your questions, and we'll address as many as we can, both throughout the webinar and at the end of the presentation. If we can't get to your question, we'll follow up with you individually after today's session. So, despite all the continued test center closures and uncertainty due to COVID-19, we expect to test hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students this fall between the scheduled SAT administrations and school day administrations. That will result in adding some new test takers to search for the first time and add SAT scores to the records of many others, in addition to the hundreds of thousands of records being added due to the new opt-in policy that we'll be discussing in detail today. If you'd like for your campus to become a test center this fall, we have a link on the screen for you to visit, sat.org/become-a-test-center. We're still looking for test centers for our December SAT administration. And finally, a reminder that AP data from this year's administration has been available in search since late July. This data load enhanced 1.8 million search records and added 44,000 new students to search. If you haven't yet, consider integrating AP strategy into your upcoming campaigns. And as always, you can learn more and access more resources for higher ed at cb.org/HECOVID-19.
We want to talk quickly about how search works, which includes new information for students who have opted in but not taken an assessment yet, which is likely why you joined this webinar today. Most College Board test takers first join search when they take the PSAT and MSQT, with nearly 80% of all College Board assessment takers opting into search when they take an assessment or when they register for that assessment. Students who don't opt in when they register or take an assessment can do so later through Big Future, perhaps when they're building a college list, or when checking their scores or registering for a future exam. And as of Monday, October 5th, we're now adding students into search at any time at the time they opt in, even if they do not have an assessment. This allows colleges to find students without delay, enhancing the role of search as an access tool. So what this means is that now when you search, you can find students with assessment scores, as well as students who have made their information available, but who don't have scores currently on file. We loaded over 380,000 of these students to the database this week. We'll get into tactics for how to find these students in a few minutes, but for this slide, the critical takeaway is that the database is now more dynamic than ever. You need to search frequently and comprehensively, or you'll miss students that will be critical to meeting your enrollment goals. And it should be noted that the 380,000 plus names that were loaded this week is a larger group than any other data load during the year, other than the PSAT and MSQT data load. So we want to share a little more information about the new student records that went into search this week. In addition to the opt-in names with and without assessments, the August SAT was also loaded on October 5th, resulting in more than 438,000 new names being added. Our mission to expand student access to higher education becomes especially critical during the pandemic. So in support of our students and in response to requests from higher ed enrollment leaders looking for additional opportunities to connect students with the College Board, the College Board Student Search Service database now includes all eligible students who have opted into search, regardless of whether they have that assessment score on file. Each day, students from across the country and worldwide come to the College Board website to plan for college and to opt into Student Search Service. These students are eager to hear from colleges, and this expansion will give all participating students the opportunity, even if they're not able to test this year due to COVID-19 cancellations. With this change, College Board Search will better reflect the entire college-going population, students who have already tested, students who are planning to test, and students who may not have the opportunity to test this year. New students were first added this week with weekly indexing ongoing, and new students available each Monday. International students in this pool are still growing as well. The opt-in population that is contributing to this group has a large number of international test takers, in fact, over 74,000, and many of which are in the class of 2021. So we're going to begin getting into some details of this pool, and we want to offer you help individually with these changes. This is new. Let us help you navigate it by scheduling a consultation with us. So we've shared with you how the search database works historically and how it'll work going forward. So what does it all mean in terms of students available in the search database? On this slide, you can see that in January, we had a total of just under 3.2 million search names available for the classes of 2021 through 2023. Through traditional search indexing, we added over 213,000 students between January and September. Despite all the test cancellations in the spring and summer, tens of thousands of students continue to enter the database. This week, by adding all opted-in students and SAT test takers into the database, over 438,000 new students are now available, bringing the total volume of names across the cohorts of 2021 through 2024 to more than 3.8 million. Week over week, going forward, any new student who opts into search will be added to the database right away. For those of you wondering, the volume of 2021 grads is quite strong compared to the volume of 2020 grads a year ago, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. But finally, it's important to mention that the database is going to significantly increase again in 2020. On December 7th, we will add the PSAT and MSQT test takers to the database. So I want to quickly repeat that so it's clear. PSAT test takers who test in October will be added to search on December 7th, which is a month earlier than usual. With that said, the current population of 2022 grads, which is already over 1.3 million, is quite robust. So if you haven't started recruiting this audience, there's no reason to wait because a critical mass is available. But this population will see growth on December 7th. The population that will see the most growth with the December 7th PSAT data load will be the 2023 population. So begin planning your outreach to the sophomore population as well. You're going to be able to reach them earlier than ever.
Given this summary and the time of year, as you're monitoring applications and thinking creatively to identify every last qualified student in the class of 2021, you might wonder how the senior data on the previous slide compares to last year. So let's take a moment to put current search volume for the class of 2021 into context. This slide shows monthly point-in-time comparisons of how the class of 2021 has been trending all year compared to the class of 2020 the year before. As you'll see on this slide, there's been a gap all year. It's not a big gap, and it's closing. Students are continuing to test, opt-in, and become available in search. And with Monday's data load, the class of 2021 is 94% of the size of the class of 2020 last October. This is right where the class of 2021 was trending relative to 2020 before COVID-19. And if you tuned in for our senior search webinar last Wednesday, it's actually 1 percentage point higher than we predicted then. It's important to know that for the class of 2021 seniors, just 5% of this pool is in search without an assessment today. College Board Search remains the largest data set of college-bound students qualified with an assessment. And searching with assessment scores when they're available has value, which has been demonstrated over time through rigorous research and practical application. So the bottom line is you can find the students you need in search. You need to keep searching, especially for 2021, through this month into November, December, and even January. This is a time to try something new, trying the new opted-in names that we'll be discussing today, trying Interest in My College. We're going to turn our attention now to the discussion of some key data points about the opted-in students added to the database earlier this week. As you know by now, on Monday, October 5th, for the very first time, College Board added the names of students who have opted into search but have not yet taken a College Board assessment. Also added on October 5th were students who took the SAT in August and thousands of students who opted in and were indexed with a prior assessment on their search record. Last week, we presented a webinar about senior search that included a summary of the August SAT portion of Monday's data load. The recording of that session will be available soon on our Higher Ed COVID page, so if you missed that session, we encourage you to check it out. Today, we're going to spotlight the students who were added to the database without an assessment, as this population will need different thinking when it comes to working with them in your existing search strategy. So on the left side of this slide, across the top row of the grid, you'll see that on Monday, we loaded a total of 473,014 students into search who had opted in without an assessment. That total figure includes the class of 2020. Knowing that most of you are done recruiting that cohort, we've also totaled just the classes of 2021 to 2024 on the second line, 386,036 students. And below that, you can see the counts broken out by each cohort. In context, the size of this data load, as Mark mentioned earlier, is second only to PSAT and MSQT, which we loaded in January of 2020. So on the right side, you can see a breakdown of students in this data load by first generation status, with those identified as first generation in the white and light gray colors on the pie chart. And on the far right at the bottom, you can see a breakdown by self-reported race and ethnicity. These charts are inclusive of the entire group of students in this data load. On this slide, we've captured counts by state for opted-in students without an assessment for the classes of 2021 to 2024. The states are in alphabetical order with the top 10 by volume highlighted in purple. We'll give you a moment to find the states of interest and their corresponding counts. And keep in mind, we will be providing this deck after the session for your reference. While 80% or 312,000 of these students are domestic, Mark mentioned earlier, 74,635 or 20% of the group have addresses outside the US. Top countries are listed on the left, with India being the largest international country represented in the load with 10,000 students, followed by countries like Pakistan, Canada, the United Arab Emirates, China, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Kazakhstan, Lebanon, Egypt, and the United Kingdom.
So you may be wondering what students can do on collegeboard.org that engages them in opting in. First, creating a College Board account with access to assessment resources, or creating, saving, or updating college lists are ways that students use cb.org. When students opt in to search online, there's a continuum of data points that could become a part of their record. You'll find every student somewhere between the basic data points collected during account creation information in the first gray box on the left and the full SAT student data questionnaire to the right. The second box in the middle, which includes major interests, GPA, and race and ethnicity, are presented to students immediately following account creation. And many students will populate answers to those questions. So students in search may have as little information as you see in the first box on this slide, or all of the data points listed, depending on how much information they complete. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about scenarios and tactics for finding the students you need to meet your goals. So here are a few details of the data points available for the opt-in names. Of the 386,000 opted-in students without an assessment who were added to search on Monday, 21% have a big future college list. This means that the IMC pool just got a lot larger. 37% of these new students have a major listed, 20% have listed a religious preference, and 61% have reported a GPA. So keep in mind, if you go searching for these students, they don't have test scores yet, so avoid using that section in order to find these students. Across the bottom of this slide, you can see the GPAs this group of students reported. And as you'll notice, the bulk of the students have between an A+ and an A- GPA. So it's likely that most of you on this webinar today will be interested in recruiting these students. Please keep in mind that over time, as these students provide more information on their College Board profile, more data points will be added. So checking back in frequently and searching frequently will help you make sure you continue to find new students who meet your criteria that are going to help you reach your goals.
To find these students in search today, there's one simple change to the interface. Looking closely at the College Board exam section, you'll now see the option to include only students who have taken a College Board exam. If you search with score bands, you'll only get students with scores. So to be clear, if you put in test scores, you will be leaving out this new group of students who have opted in, want to hear from colleges, but have not yet tested. So to find these students who have opted in but do not yet have an assessment attached to their record, you simply need to select Include All Opt-in Students. So our first order of business was to make these students available who opted in regardless of whether they had an assessment. This meets the needs of our higher ed colleagues who repeatedly asked us to do everything we can to help them connect with students. Within the system, we wanted to be consistent in delivering records of students with an assessment when assessment score bands are used as a filter. That is the case. There are no tricks here, no extra buttons that you need to click. We also wanted to clearly identify the option of selecting all students. Within a few weeks, we will also offer the option of identifying from among all students who opted in only those who do not have an assessment score.
So how will you go about your searches going forward? Let's talk about a few different possible options. If you're still building your applicant pool for 2021, and likely most of you are, don't delay on talking to these 2021 grads. Over 138,000 brand new 2021 grads just entered the database, and these students have never been in search before. So it's possible these students have heard from very few, if any, colleges or universities yet. You can talk to them first. It might be too late to find new markets for your 2021 population, but it's not too late to find every last qualified 2021 student in your most productive markets. And if you're looking for 2021 students outside your primary area, the Interest in My College tool will help you find interested students efficiently and cost effectively. As you saw a couple slides back, this group is reporting high GPAs overall. So if academic qualification is important, don't think that these opt-in students aren't for you. So given all the new names available in the class of 2021, you'll likely want to extend your senior searches throughout the fall. And our general recommendation is to build a new relationship with these students now, rather than waiting for scores to enter the database. Here we have a real example of a regional public university who is a strong search user that focuses on saturating their home state. This institution has gone test optional, as so many others have. And as of Friday, October 2nd, they had found all but about 560 students in their home state in the class of 2021. In other words, they did a very thorough job, and they pride themselves on recruiting every student in their state. After the data load this week, they now have access to over 2,000 new students. I'm going to show you here live what those numbers look like and select the critical pieces for their search, which is very straightforward, and we will get a sense of what this all looks like. So for this institution, 2,000 new students are available after only about 500 available last week. 1,200 of these have a test score available to them, and 800 of which do not have a test score on file. Now, this may not seem like a huge number of new names, but for this institution, it's very important to them to leave no student behind, and they're not concerned that about 800 of these students don't have test scores on yet because they went test optional for fall of 2021. Now, I should note, this institution also searches for 2022 grads, although with a somewhat lesser focus. Last Friday, they could find about 5,000 2022 grads available, and that number has now grown to over 10,000 with the new names that were added just this week.
If academic qualification is important to you, your first step is to keep your order segmentation the same. So place the orders you always place first. Then you'd add one new segment for all opt-ins and add your GPA range without including non-responders. Now you're capturing any student who falls outside of your score bands but meets your specified GPA range. This is a strategy that has suited test optional institutions well over time and now expands more broadly to also find students who have not yet tested but are qualified based on their GPA. This leaves only students who have neither a test score nor a GPA. And we would encourage you not to lose sight of these students. You have opportunities with segment analysis service or interest in my college to make the most of this pool. You might order students by cluster based on median SAT scores for that cluster using segment analysis service, or lean in with interest in my college to identify which of these students have qualified interest in your institution. Or certainly, you can talk with your College Board rep to discuss strategies that might fit your institution and its goals, and how you may choose to make use of the forthcoming feature to search only for students without an assessment. So we're going to jump in and look at another case study now. This is a nationally selective school focusing on art. They saturate art and design majors in search. They don't order very frequently. Perhaps out of concern for the volume of students available, but they do use segment analysis service when they do search to saturate the entire United States based on students who have indicated interest in one of the majors that they focus on. They are a test optional institution, and as of last week, before the data load, they had 47,758 students available to them since the last time they ordered. So some great opportunity already for this institution. And now we'll go into search and we'll take a look at what happens when we copy this order and look at the volume available today. So here we are in search. I've copied this order that I just shared with you. And you can see here that without adjusting any filters, the search is deduplicating against all prior orders within this account. And compared to the 47,000 or so that we were finding on last Friday, now this institution can find 52,432 students in the class of 2021 to power their senior search campaigns. Now, this is an institution that, again, is interested in saturating students with major interest in art and design. So in College Board exams, we're including all opt-in students. We're saturating the United States with most states selected here. They have an A+ to B- GPA, qualifying these students within these certain majors that have been selected. And so this is a group of students that they would be willing to consider for admission upon review. Now down here at the bottom, they are requiring that all students have only a verified email address. That means that they're excluding any students who are in search with only a mailing address. Now, one option to increase the size of their funnel is to switch to students who have either a verified postal address or a verified email address. And as I scroll up to the top here, I'll show you that we jumped 10,000 students from 52,000 to 62,914. So here's another way for this institution to get in front of an additional 10,000 seniors who otherwise meet the criteria that they're looking for, and they can send their communication in one channel as opposed to missing those students altogether. So in sum, the opportunity here presented by including all opt-in students gives this institution the ability to really broaden their reach to students who have an interest in their area of expertise in the art programs.
No matter what cohort you're talking about, there's some market concepts to think about. In your most important market, you'll likely want to be talking with all students for the classes of 2021, 2022, and 2023, whether they have an assessment on file or not. But that calculation may change slightly when you look at your secondary or tertiary markets. Maybe in further markets, due to the large number of students available, you may strategize a little bit differently. Some of you may continue to focus on students with scores, or perhaps you decide to invest in a tool like Segment Analysis Service or Interest in My College to help you target the right groups with additional key data points that these tools provide. I mentioned this earlier, but it's important enough to say again, there's value in performing new searches to find these students because they've not been getting communication through College Board Search before. You're trying to build a market and build brand awareness. Talk to the students who are there and who are available now. In a normal year, you might send an admissions rep to Texas, ideally to do high school visits and college fairs, and hopefully those visits are in the right locations for your institutional goals. For example, when a student walks up to the college fair table and asks some questions, your representative is going to recruit and work with that student because that's the point of them being there. So even though you can't meet with that student face-to-face in their school, you can talk with them because they're available in Search. With the new opt-in names that were just added to Search, there's more than 6,000 brand new students in Texas who don't have an exam yet. If those students are in the markets where you would have sent your rep, you may want to find them in Search. So here's an example of an institution on the East Coast who's a segment analysis user. This institution uses a set of educational neighborhoods that make up the majority of their student body, and they're test optional. They focus their searches on students in an SAT range of about 850 to 1,400. And the geography they're searching for is pretty wide, including parts of Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. Before these new names were loaded into Search this week, we took a look at how this campus was doing in their most important markets, and to no surprise, they've been recruiting nearly all of the students in their market, minus a small number of less than 1,000. Copying their most recent order, which is for their most important educational neighborhoods, we now find that 3,798 students are available this week. Now keep in mind, they did use test scores in their search. So if they want to keep their search as is, they have these close to 4,000 students available now. But we can also determine that by switching to include all opt-in students, that additional students become available. We can toggle through and look at this in a variety of different ways, but the real takeaway here is that this campus, by just making this one simple change and making sure that they're looking for students in the markets they trust the most based on educational neighborhood, these students meet their GPA requirements, they now have more than 13,500 students available that they can be recruiting. Knowing this campus, who is an avid and strong searcher, I anticipate they'll be adding these names for outreach very soon to drive senior applications.
So we've heard from many colleagues across the field about their inquiry pool concerns, initially about the class of 2021, and now more and more about pipelines for the classes of 22 and 23. The opt-ins we've been discussing today give you the opportunity to access these names earlier. And moving forward, as we'll continue indexing opted-in students every Monday, regardless of assessment status. So as you think about building interest in your institution, here are 3 things we'd encourage you to think about and strategize around. First, licensing students when they opt in gives you the opportunity to get them earlier. Pull ahead of the pack and build a relationship when the student indicates they're interested in engaging with colleges. So as a result, we expect you'll find strong return on investment with this population. Search always deduplicates from your previously licensed students from future orders, so you never pay for the same name twice, unless you intentionally move the filter off the default in the graduating class section of Search to include all students. So what that means is that when these students later test, they'll be deduplicated from future score bands in your future orders. So think about how you're using score bands in Search, in messaging, and what this means for you. The second thing to consider is that it's important we remind you that College Board Search has moved the date of our PSAT and MSQT data load earlier this year from January to early December. So we've already mentioned this, but wanted to mention it again, as this will have huge implications for what you do for younger cohorts. We've also added a PSAT and MSQT test date in early January, which will be loaded in March. And we expect the December data load for PSAT and MSQT to be the larger of the two, infusing a huge number of 22 and 23 cohort students qualified with an assessment score into the database at that time. And then finally, if you're concerned with pipeline building and you haven't yet added Interest in My College or IMC to your strategy, now's a good time to do it. And your College Board representative can help you understand that product and how you can integrate it into your strategy. So at the end of our slide decks, we always talk about upcoming webinars. College Board has been committed throughout the COVID-19 crisis to staying in touch this way and sharing information with higher ed. You can certainly register for these upcoming sessions and also view our on-demand webinars from prior sessions this year at cb.org/HECOVID-19. Two upcoming sessions to highlight today. The first is about AP, and so this will really get into how advanced placement can be used as a resource to help with recruitment, application review, enrollment, and retention in this COVID-19 disrupted educational environment. We're going to be talking about recent research that demonstrates powerful linkages between student participation in AP and college outcomes, such as course and major selection and retention and completion. So we hope you'll join us to hear from our colleagues on the information about the 4 million AP exams taken in 2020, and also highlighting some institutional best practices. Also, in early November, on Friday, November 6th, we'll have an internationally focused webinar where COVID-19 has certainly created upheaval within the world of higher ed, but especially international student mobility. So we'll be diving in with a panel of experts on how U.S. universities can sustain their international recruitment, diversify, and maybe even expand international enrollment through this pandemic. So we'll talk about ways that, especially from a search perspective, you can support your international recruitment and outreach goals. So we'll look forward to having you join us for one or both of those sessions. And again, you can find those pre-recorded sessions or previously recorded sessions at our Higher Ed COVID page.
And finally, we would just like to remind you that, as always, we are here to help. Contact your College Board representative. If you don't know who that is, we'll help you find the right person. We would love to help customize a consultation with you to meet your needs and goals. We realize that the changes we discussed today are complex, not only in the ways that you may actually build your searches, but in the ways that students enter the database. So let us help you think through the right approach for your institution. You will get a link to a recording of this webinar today, as well as a link to request a consultation in the follow-up email. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Carolyn or I, and we will get you in touch with your right contact person. So we very much appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you about these new names and all the great opportunities you have. Thank you.
Folks, we really appreciate your attention today. Mark and I are going to hang on the line, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Please feel free to send those through the Q&A or chat box here within Zoom. I'm also going to launch a poll. We have a few questions for you that we'd appreciate your response to as you send your questions to us. One of the first questions that we've got here is, when can we expect the option to search only students without an assessment? We expect that will be live very soon. We've got our IT teams working on it. We don't have an exact deployment date, but we're being told within a few weeks.
Thanks to those of you who are responding. We'd love to hear from all of you that are on the line if you'd like to answer our poll questions. While you guys do that, another question that is coming in, someone is asking if the opt-in students are students that have registered for the test but have just not taken it yet. And that is in fact true for many of these students, although it's also possible that students just created a College Board account and opted into Search but haven't registered for a test yet. That is possible. It's also possible that students have a College Board account and built a college list, which would put that information into the Interest in My College pool and also opted in. So there's a variety of reasons why a student could be in this opt-in pool, and it's not just that they haven't tested yet, although that is the case for many of these students.
Here's a question about what time of day is the data available on release date? Usually the data is refreshing overnight. We can't say for sure. It really kind of depends on the size of the load and other IT factors as to what time it actually goes live. But certainly we would expect it to be there early that Monday morning.
And someone just asked, is the pricing the same for opt-in students as it is versus students with scores? And yes, that is the case. College Board names are 47 cents each, and the price is not differentiated whether they're a student with an assessment or without.
Any other questions today? All right, well, we appreciate you sticking with us as we went a little longer than we anticipated, but had so much great information to share with you today. Mark and I will hang on the line for a few more minutes in case any other questions come up and we can chat with you individually. Also, please do feel free to reach out to us or your College Board representative, and we'd love to connect with you live and in person to talk about what this means specifically for you and for your goals. So thanks again for your attention today, and we look forward to working with you soon.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.